Good. Okay. All right, so we have that, so let's keep going. So now that we have 5x squared plus 10x, right? We just did that. We got that as 5x, right? Times x plus 2. X plus 2, you can't factor out anything. The GCF is 1. So we have 5x times x plus 2 plus x plus 2. And so from here, we get, when you factor out x plus 2, right, you put it in front. What's left over? Well, 5x is here, so that stays. We're taking out x plus 2 itself, but we have to put a 1 there. Because, 1 is because we're pulling out x plus 2, so 1 is left over. And that's actually the answer, so we're done. I'm showing less calculations because the impression I got last time was the extra calculations I had caused more confusion. That's why I'm showing less. And for this part of the problem on the exam, this is all I would be expecting on this part of it. I do also know that some students do like to see all the steps. So to satisfy them, I guess, and myself, because I like to see all the steps, I added those extra steps. So these steps, again, you can skip on an exam on this part. But this is the missing detail, so to say, in what we just saw here. Right? You want to factor out x plus 2. Well, you have to get what's left over. How do you do that? You divide, and you divide into each quotient. That cancels with this, right? You divide into each quotient. That's how we get just 5x. For the second part, x plus 2 cancels with itself. That's actually why you get a 1 here. Anything divided by itself is 1. So we again get the answer. Okay, that's good. What questions do you have about this? Okay, let's keep going then. So here is another example. So we have 6x squared plus x minus 7. We're going to factor this thing out. Okay. Now, first, again, we have a coefficient of 1, right? We have a non-zero constant term. So that tells us, again, that the GCF has to be 1. We've seen that before. Today, actually, we've seen it as well. Okay. All right. So this is the trinomial we're dealing with, right? By comparing, which is what I'm doing here, we can see that capital A is which is the leading coefficient of the polynomial, the coefficient of x squared. A is 6 in this case. B, coefficient of x, is 1. C, the constant term, is minus 7. Notice we have to include the minus sign. We have to, okay? You don't forget the minus sign. So again, A is 6. B, the coefficient of x, right? I mean, the coefficient, it looks like the coefficient is not there, okay? But it's understood then to be 1. And C is minus 7. Okay. Good. So A times C, 6 times negative 7, is negative 42. And B is 1. So we want two numbers, right, whose product is minus 42 and whose sum is 1. The product is minus 42, the sum is 1. I know it's the answer's here, but let me just say this. If you did try 6 and minus 7, well, that product is minus 42, but that sum, 6 plus negative 7, is 1. It's negative 1, not 1. So 6 and negative 7 are not going to work. Their sum is negative 1. We want 1. So, okay, let's try 7 and negative 6. That does work. 7 and negative 6. You know, the product is still minus 42. The sum is 1. So these are the numbers we use. Okay, so just like before, we're going to replace b, in this case 1, with the sum of those two numbers. So 1 is replaced by negative 6 plus 7, okay, like so. What do we do next? We're going to distribute x, right? Remember, x is being multiplied by 1. 1 is the entire sum. So we distribute, okay? And that gives us 6x squared minus 6 times x plus 7 times x minus 7. And that's great, as you can see. So now we have a polynomial with 4 terms. Okay? I mean, I did skip finding the GCF here, although it does turn out to be 1. The GCF of this 4-term one, mostly because there's a non-zero constant term. So again, we take m to be 0, okay? And also 7 and 6, their only common factor is 1. So the greatest common factor of the coefficients and the constant term would be 1. So the GCF is 1. I mean, you really only have to find the GCF if I ask you to. I mean, I said that for the other class, and I'll say it for everyone here. You only have to get the GCF really if I ask you to. So anyway, we form two groups here, as you can see, right? 6x squared minus 6x plus 7x minus 7. So we have to get the GCF. We do have to get the GCF of each group, though, because we're going to factor by grouping. So here, the smallest x, so here we have to factor this. Okay. Well, notice the smallest exponent of x is 1, as you can see, right? So m is 1. And 6 is the only coefficient here is 6. They're both the same. So the greatest common factor among the coefficients is just 6 itself. 6 itself. So here the GCF is just 6 times x, which is 6 times x. I think I misspoke before. I mean, here you have to get the GCF of each group here. So you do. That's just part of the process of factor by grouping. Okay, so we have this. So we factor it out. We have 6x squared minus 6 times x, right? To factor it out, what do? You put it in front and then you divide. That's what I'm doing here. When you divide into each term, right? And when you divide into each term, the 6's cancel, right? And you're left with x squared over x. That gives you x. Here, the 6x's cancel, and you're left with 1. So we get 6x times x minus 1. So that's what we get here. So that's for the first group. Now for the second group, okay, the 7x minus 7. Well, notice the smallest exponent of x is 0. So m is 0. In other words, we can't factor out x out of this group. The coefficient and the constant term both equal 7. So the GCF, the greatest common factor of the coefficient and the constant term is 7. They're both equal to 7, so the greatest common factor must be 7. So the GCF, so B is 7, and the GCF is 7, x to the 0, which is 7. So that's what we get. So altogether, we're going to get 7x minus 7 is 7 times this here, which of course you divide into each term. And when you do that, these 7s go bye-bye. You're left with x. These 7s cancel as well, and you're left with 1. Okay, great. So from the first group, we got 6x times x minus 1. From here, we got 7 times x minus 1. If we plug it in, we substitute, that is, this is what we get. Now, notice we could take out x minus 1, right? That's in parentheses, that's the same. Take it out, put it in front. Put it in front, right? And what we get is 6x is left over from the first group, 7's left over from the second group. So we get this. All together, we get this, as you can see. Okay. Not done yet. I want to show one more slide. On this